All right, Bucks win, Bucks win, Bucks win, and a big win. 37-20. The Commanders put on six late. It was looking like it was gonna be 37-14. Give credit to Jayden Daniels, who I thought played pretty well in this one. I know the numbers aren't spectacular. 17 for 24, 184 yards, but he did have 88 yards and two rushing touchdowns rushing. So that was, I think, a big part of his game was some of the scrambles. But for the most part, I mean, I think the story has to start again. If you're new here, unsure exactly what I do, I started this a little bit ago, just kind of giving my reactions to the games. I am a Tampa Bay fan, just giving my thoughts on what I think happened, kind of from a Buccaneers perspective. But I like to also talk about the other team, give my thoughts on how they played. But doing this video, I think we have to start with the offense and really have to start with Baker Mayfield, who, interestingly enough, I didn't think got off to an incredibly hot start. He missed a couple of throws. One was called back due to a penalty, but was still a missed throw, nearly threw an interception. That was kind of his one blemish in the otherwise really good game. But it was the kind of thing where it's like he just kept hitting his throws, and it's like, okay, he's playing well, not making mistakes, and all of a sudden you look up and you're like, he hasn't missed a throw in like his last 10 passes. Like, he's just consistently hitting these, and some of them were tough. I mean, that first Mike Evans touchdown was impressive, to say the least. I mean, that was obviously a great catch by Evans, but a really well thrown ball, and a lot of these were well thrown balls. Again, people are going to point to the Washington defense, and that's something we will talk about, but these weren't all layups. Yes, there were plenty of layups, and he hit the layups, but he hit the more difficult throws as well, I thought. So that's definitely good to see. Yeah, I mean, several guys to talk about. I think we can go to the Washington defense, which is it's not a good defense. It just isn't. And I think if you're a Commanders fan, you were perhaps hoping that maybe what would happen is with a new coaching staff, things would start to get a little better. Through week one, that has not proven to be the case. So, guys were getting open, and Tampa Bay's receivers were just winning. But at the same time, another thing you have to think about is, for one thing, Mike Evans just looked amazing. Like I said, that catch and his first touchdown was fantastic. The second touchdown was very good as well, and had a couple other catches in there as well. 61 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 catches. Chris Godwin all of a sudden looked like Chris Godwin again. And I think last year, it's possible that it was just kind of a bad scheme fit last year. I don't know, but I never thought he was fully unlocked last year. He still had 1,000 yards. Like, he wasn't a bad receiver, but there was a point when you thought of him as like, oh, he's easily a number one receiver. I think last year you're like, no, he's a good number two. He played like a number one again today. Like, he was on that level. Some of these catches he was making were really good. I mean, it's a great combination of Mayfield, who can throw the fastball, and Godwin, who has hands of steel. Those two things work really well together. So having the Evans and Godwin being fully realized is a huge benefit. And you got to wonder a little bit as well. It's too early to say this, but perhaps Jason Light has found another, guy who wasn't a first-round pick like Chris Godwin, wide receiver who could be a real player. Jalen McMillan, I thought, was great in this one. I thought that you can almost make the argument he was their best receiver despite just the one catch, because I mean, you can't make the argument, I guess, because he had to drop pass, but he dropped what would have been like a 30-yard touchdown. I think it would have been a 40-yard touchdown. So had he just made that, all of a sudden, 70 yards and 2 touchdowns, it feels different. And then, Baker would have had 5, I suppose, because that was a different drive, although the whole game changes. But, McMillan, with that, he had that one, which wasn't caught. He was open on another one that I think would have gotten called back due to a penalty anyway, but Mayfield missed him on it. He could have gotten a lot of yards that way. And McMillan had another catch, another play that wasn't, I think he was interfered with. That's what it was. He was going to be open for a touchdown, instead was interfered with, so didn't get the touchdown. He could have easily had like 3 or 4 touchdowns in this game. Like, he was on fire at times, only had the one, but still, a 132-yard touchdown, very good. Now, again, how much of this is just Washington defense? Probably some, but looked very good. The downsides offensively, not a ton. I still don't know. Barton definitely looked good, and we saw some like better Blocking, I think, run blocking, it still wasn't perfect. I mean, Rachaad White still had 2.1 yards per carry, which is kind of a crazy stat. He had 75 receiving yards, so that's kind of why it feels weird. So over 100 yards on the day, but only 31 of those were rushing, even though he had 15 carries. That's got to get better. Bucky Irving had a lot higher yards per carry, but he was out there on the final drive when Washington wasn't really, didn't seem to be putting in as much effort as they were in the first quarter. I thought it was maybe bigger running lanes, or maybe they're just tired, whatever. But running game still needs some work. That being said, Washington actually stops the run pretty well. That's something they're good at. So it's not like I wouldn't make complete like overarching. It's week one anyways, but I wouldn't completely be like, well, they stink. I don't know. But yeah, as a whole, also I thought Trey Palmer had some way too many mistakes early on. I mean, he was the one who ran the route that I didn't think was a great route that could have resulted in an interception by Mayfield. He had a penalty. He had a couple penalties actually, kind of struggling to get set, that kind of stuff. Those are the things Tampa Bay will have to work out. Already 6 minutes into this video, and I haven't even talked about the other side of the ball. I'm fired up. I'm having fun. It was a good game for us Bucs fans watching this. For the Commanders, like I said, I thought Daniels' rushing was really good. There were even plays that Tampa Bay kind of had him. They had guys in the area, and Daniels was just faster than them. Like, what are you going to do? I thought Brian Robinson played pretty well as well. His numbers won't show it, but I thought he was pretty solid. And Austin Eckler, I mean, what's crazy is Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson ended up being the two leading receivers in this game. Eckler was the leading receiver with 52 yards. There was definitely some good by Daniels. The passing game just wasn't really there. Quite frankly, here's a crazy stat. The leading receiver for the Commanders, the leading wide receiver, not counting tight ends because Zach Ertz had 28 yards, or running backs, was Luke McCaffrey with 18 yards. I mean, that's not going to win you many games in the NFL. I thought they blocked well, though. It's just really, I don't think this Washington team is awful. I just think their secondary is, and I think that's kind of where they're going to struggle. So for Tampa Bay, the other thing you have to think about is, Tampa Bay definitely, it's pretty crazy when you think about how many injuries they had in their secondary of their own. I mean, Jamel Dean was out there, and they have really good safeties, but, you have guys who maybe aren't used to being outside corners having to play outside corners. I saw Christian Izien playing on the outside a little bit and playing well there, and that's certainly not a position he's used to playing. So, other players stepped it up. It's going to be a much bigger task, though, against Detroit, and quite frankly, I don't know how much I love the odds against Detroit, but definitely a disappointing loss if you're a Commanders fan, but I thought your young quarterback played well, so I wouldn't be too disappointed, and a big win for the Buccaneers. I think it was fun, and it's interesting, too, where the game flow, kind of looking back on it, it feels like a blowout. It didn't fully feel like a blowout for me throughout a large part of this game, because there was a point when it was, it was 13, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was it's 16-7 at the half. The Commanders get the ball back, and Jayden Daniels just misses a deep shot. McLaurin was open behind Dean. If Daniels hits that, then all of a sudden it's a 2-point game. Like, that's kind of feels like a turning point. They didn't score on that drive, and then the Buccaneers get a touchdown right after. That felt like a bit of a turning point, I think. And even there was that weird penalty, a block in the back that could have allowed the Commanders to get more points, and they missed 2 field goals. So again, I think the biggest issue was I don't think they were going to win this game because Tampa Bay kept scoring, but Commanders had chances to make it interesting early on, weren't quite able to get it done. I thought Mayfield played really good. MVP campaign for Mayfield. I'm not sure I'm going to quite go that far just yet, but definitely a very good statistical day and just a good day in general. So, yeah, fun win for the Buccaneers. Not too many complaints, although the biggest thing you have to say is let's see how you do against a team that isn't Washington. I think it's just how you're going to have to view it. But, yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And, of course, as always, thanks for watching.